country red like Reagan, gonna shoot our guns, gonna eat our bacon.
I'm not giving up bacon.
And never.
I don't know which order it's in. Pry my cold, dead hands off my firearm or my hot hand off that freshly cooked piece of bacon.
Or my fork.
Well, I'm fighting the government. Bacon in my left hand, firearm in my right. That's America. Let's go to Charles real quick. Charles, welcome to the program. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for listening. Do you have a question for Steve Marshall?
Yes, sir. And thanks for taking.
Oh, and your buddy Chris Reid's here, so you could probably skip the AG and just talk to Chris.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, get the true answers.
There you go.
I try to help people that are in between court and whatever may be happening to them to get them in drug rehabs and different types of help, But I've noticed that everywhere I went, I go to several counties up here around where I am, that a lot of times, Attorney General Marshall, they do not get seen by their court-appointed attorneys until the day of, the court for 20 minutes or however long in there to negotiate something. And I just don't think that fulfills the Supreme Court Gideon versus Wainwright of adequate legal representation. And I wondered who handles trying to at least get them to come to a jail and see them for a few minutes or get an email from them or something. I mean, sometimes months, maybe even a year's passed, and they've never seen these people.
And Chris, you may want to chime in on this as well, but I mean, clearly every defendant should be entitled to effective representation. Effective, not necessarily meaning victorious, but meeting the professional standards that we have. And seeing a client for 10 minutes is clearly not going to be the case. Now, if it's somebody that is contract counsel or appointed counsel, then a presiding judge in that circuit, potentially would be somebody to talk to. You have the ability to initiate a complaint against the bar about whether or not somebody is practicing in that regard. But you would hope that those who are representing a criminal defendant would exercise their authority in a professional manner. Would continue
There's
to be able
no
to
actual redress for that. I have suggested that they write the judge, and that has helped with a couple of judges. They write the attorney a letter and admonish them for not adequate legal representation. But
Charles,
some of these people have mental health issues, and some of them do not have families.
Yeah, I think it's a serious issue, but I have seen there have been a lot of inroads in the last several years, and I think we are getting better. But as I will tell everyone, adequate legal representation. Go to readlawalabama.com.
There you go, Charles.
There you go.
See you, buddy. Appreciate it.
Okay,
Thank you. That's what I tell everybody.
I know.
No doubt about it. So the Kavanaugh confirmations, they're meeting certain demands of Miss Blasey Ford. Susan Collins, Senator Collins, is saying that the second lady, Ramirez, needs to be listened to. I think that's a pretty brilliant move by Collins, frankly. So Collins is saying, yeah, bring on the lady that even her best friend says, I've never heard this story. Even the New York Times couldn't find anybody corroborate. I still say Ronan Farrow, by the way, is just trying to get back into good graces, or he's just doing what his mama told him. Because his mama's out saying all kind of crazy stuff yesterday, and I'm like, there's the connection. You will not get any more cookies, Ronan. Especially the kind of Big Dave probably likes these kind of cookies. The kind of cookies she probably cooks, you feel good about them. Anyway, questions about Kavanaugh. Are we going overboard meeting all these requirements? I know they're making political decisions because they're afraid it's going to look like a bunch of old white guys or being mean, questioning this poor victim. What are y'all's thoughts from the attorneys here?
I will say it's clearly in the political sphere now, because there's no doubt, it's kind of what we talked about earlier. Feinstein had for a long time the opportunity to provide this information to the committee.
Work within the process.
Committee to vet it. They could have done it in private. When people talk about, Miss Ford or Dr. Ford, whatever her name is, that, she's now under all this public scrutiny. Well, it didn't happen that way. And I do know that the chairman of the committee gave her an opportunity to be able to give testimony under oath in private, to be able to allow her to share whatever she wanted to be able to share in a way that didn't cause her to have to travel to Washington or whatever. And it's the Democrats that have made this happen. And to the extent that folks want to look at, her being victimized again in their terms, it's the Democratic senators that are causing this to be able to happen. Ultimately, I cannot divorce myself from my perspective of a prosecutor, which is what I've done most of my professional life. And what I look at in any of these allegations is, can you find either witness testimony or evidence to corroborate what the person said took place?
Okay.
And I've yet, Chris, you may be different with me, I've yet to see any corroboration of the testimony here.
Yeah, in fact, the only corroboration is that to the falseness of the allegations. I mean, I was actually watching Morning Joe this morning, and I expected them to be just so adamant, in favor of Miss Ford. But even on Morning Joe, like, they were very, they were basically conceding that there is nothing here. You have these two people that have made no crowd of statements. One of them we know didn't even know supposedly what was going on, and everything that's been coming out has been in favor of Kavanaugh. And I saw one poll this morning that showed Kavanaugh's approval ratings had gone up a few points because of all this. And the danger here is that we're no longer going to be able to get good people to go into government, because if people are going to ask all kinds of questions and accuse you of anything, I mean, people that have families and kids are just going to say it's not worth it. And so the only people that are going to come forward are going to be the shady characters, and that actually is going to get worse people in government, not better. And at some point, I mean, the Democrats need to realize this guy really is kind of like a Daniel in the Bible. This guy is so solid and such a good man and has spent his entire life trying to do the right thing to help people. And for them to knowingly attack him, and for the Hawaii senator to go and say that she doesn't think that he deserves due process because, quote, she didn't like the way he ruled on some of his cases.
Wow.
That is dangerous. Everybody.
There's a new definition of morality, remember.
And
if
even
you're a leftist, you're more moral.
And even Mika Brzezinski said that was wrong, and she should have stood up and said absolutely not. So if Mika's coming out and saying that, I think I'm seeing a trend line here, and I've actually seen some of the internal polling in the red states that is doing better for the Republican senators, because the energy is so great amongst Republicans now that the ones that were going to sit out or maybe not vote, they're angry enough to vote. So this may backfire. He's going to be on the court either way. He just might be on the court, and we might keep Congress for the Republicans, which would be great. Let it all backfire, and because the Democrats will always find a way to lose, even when every other factor says they should win, like last election.
How does go ahead?
No, you can see the hypocrisy of the Democratic position in looking what's going on in the AG's race in Minnesota. You had
with Keith Ellison,
yes, who has been accused by the ex-girlfriend of domestic violence with information that can be corroborated, but yet he's on the ballot, he's being supported, and he's somebody
and I think I saw the
behind.
numbers. 5% of Democrats think he's guilty, but the same group of people overwhelmingly think he's innocent. But the same group of people that only 5% of them believe he's guilty overwhelmingly believe Kavanaugh's guilty.
Yeah. Go figure.
It's amazing. It really, really is. So from a prosecutor's standpoint, when someone, now we've got Avenatti, the film star lawyer.
Porn star lawyer.
Porn star lawyer. He's saying that, he's found some other women to do whatever. How does it affect a prosecutor's mindset if you're hearing, okay, well, somebody else has got some more people? I mean, I know prosecutors are kind of designed to say, he probably did it, I'm after him. Is it back to what you said earlier, that unless you've got some corroborating evidence, you're just talking?
In fact, other allegations wouldn't necessarily even be admissible in a criminal case. Assuming that it's an allegation of sexual abuse, and you have 5 other people that say it took place to me,
mm-hmm.
There is rules of evidence that actually would more than likely exclude that sort of pattern and practice evidence, is what it's described, from even being able to consider it in a court of law.
Really?
So
I didn't know that.
It is something that, again, for me, specific to the allegations that have been made by this professor, what is it that can be supported? I'm sure Chris would love to do the cross-examination if she were a witness in a criminal case, because there is so much about her testimony right now that is not supported, even to the extent, what did she say, there were four people in the room, 3 other boys, and now we find out one of the people was a woman that was in there, and then the number keeps changing.
And the woman denies it too.
Yeah, and so, it's just one of those that so many aspects of her testimony could not be supported. And so, again, this is a man who has had a distinguished career. His character has been supported by so many that have come into contact with him. His adult life has shown an impeccable commitment to public service. And we're now at the last minute suddenly calling him this. It just doesn't make sense.
It's unfair.
I mean, it's not just unfair. I mean, honestly, it's evil. It's evil what they're doing. And the sad thing is, behind the scenes, some of these Democratic senators are saying to their staff that they know that this guy is actually innocent, but they think it's great for the movement, and they're so afraid of their fringe base that if they say anything or do anything that's not in accordance, they're just going to get bashed. So,
is there anything worse than saying, "I know the guy's innocent, but I'm just going to keep helping people destroy him"? And that may be worse to me than the people actually out trying to destroy him up front, just lying about him. You see what I'm saying? So now you're so weak that you can't even stand for truth. In my world, that's probably worse than just the perpetrator.
Yeah, there's a statement I've heard it's from a prosecutor side say it's easy to convict the guilty, it's hard to convict the innocent.
Right.
You know, and if you're a prosecutor seeking a conviction against an innocent person, you're not doing your job. That's exactly what they're trying to do in Congress.
It's amazing. Hey, somebody's got a question for you. Let's go to Sharon. Sharon, welcome to the program. Do you have a question for Steve Marshall?
I do. Thank you for taking my call.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for listening to the show.
Mr. Marshall, this is a little bit off topic from what you've been discussing.
Sure.
I wanted to ask, and you may not even know, what is the range of MS-13 in Alabama? Where are they? Where do you believe they are? And this is kind of, I guess, related to where the child was murdered.
Up in Huntsville.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you could just discuss that just a little so that I've had this question, but there's no clear answer out anywhere.
Yeah, let me, I guess, paint a picture fairly broadly, is that we know that MS-13 is directly connected to the cartel. The cartel is associated with meth, heroin, fentanyl, and other drugs coming into the state, so we clearly see that going on. We know that there's a direct connection because the cartel was involved in this murder in Huntsville. So it's an area of concern. It's something we'll continue to work on.
Absolutely. We're running out of time. First half is down. Steve Marshall has been my guest. Chris Reid came in for a impromptu performance. Appreciate you guys. Thank you for the job you're doing. Sharon, thank you for the call. You're doing a great job, Steve. Good luck to you in the campaign, but also keep working on those issues, man. You're making us proud.
Thank you.
Take care. We're headed to the locker room. We shall return.